How's it going, campers? It's Scouty Steve here, and for what we got on the table, today we're going to be going over some maps and compass. The Mayas were actually very known for their maps and compass and finding direction around. The ancient Maya were devoted astronomers, and they recorded and interpreted every aspect of the sky. They believed the will and actions of the gods could be read in the stars, the moon, and the planets, so they dedicated time to doing so, and many of their most important buildings were built with astronomy in mind. The sun, the moon, planets, and Earth were all thought to be gods. Venus in particular, they were studied by the Maya. The Maya believed that Earth was the center of everything. And like I said before, they believed that the stars, moon, sun, and planets were all gods. The Mayans believed that in their movements were interpreted as gods traveling between the Earth and the underworld. Many events in Maya life were planned to match up with certain celestial movements. For example, a war might be delayed until the gods were in place, or a ruler might take the throne of a Mayan city-state. Only when a certain planet was visible in the night sky is when it would happen, and that's how heavily they relied on astronomy in day-to-day life. The sun was also very important to the ancient Maya. A cool story is the Mayan sun god was Kinich Ahau. He was considered to be one of the most powerful gods of the Mayan pantheon, and was considered to be an aspect of Itztama, one of the Mayan creator gods. Kinich Ahau would shine in the sky all day before transforming himself into a jaguar at night, to pass through Ixalba, the Mayan underworld. The Maya were experts at predicting things like solar eclipses, solstices, and equinoxes. The moon wasn't nearly as important as the sun to the ancient Mayans. Mayan astronomers studied and predicted the moon's movements throughout the night sky, with really great accuracy. To the Maya, the stars were less important than the sun, and the moon, and Venus, as well as the other planets. However, the stars shifted seasonally and were used by Mayan astronomers to predict when seasons would come and go, which was critical for farming. For example, the rise of the star constellation, the Pleiades, also known as the Seven Sisters and Messier 45, in the night sky, occurred about the same time the rains come to the Mayan regions of Central America and southern Mexico. The stars, therefore, were one of the most practical use than many of the other aspects of Mayan astronomy. Many important Mayan buildings, such as temples, pyramids, palaces, observatories, and ball courts, were laid out in accordance with astronomy. Temples and pyramids in particular were designed in such a way that the sun, moon, stars, and planets would be visible from the top or through certain windows at important times of the year. I think that we would all agree that the ancient Maya relied on astronomy quite a bit in the day. So now that we have learned a bit about how the Mayans mapped the sky, let's go into today's lesson on maps and compasses. So what we have here on the table is what's known as a topographical map. So you generally would see online or just trying to figure out where you're going. It's just a generic map. It would have street lines, buildings, stuff like that on there. A topographical map, it shows elevations and more in-depth of the area, whether it's like a forest, something like that. You're more able to tell heights and elevations of the land around you, rivers, some walkways, and even some buildings like that. So the first thing that you always want to know when reading a map is the legend. So moving over here, we can see that the legend is symbols on the map and what they correspond to. So looking down here, we have a P symbol, which is for parking, a little barn, which would be groceries. That's a fork and knife. That'd be for meals. The little telephone symbol would be a telephone. The mail would be a post office. A lean-to would be a shelter. So if you're on a trail, or a shelter might be for the camp. The campsite, the general camping area. Developed water, that would be drinking water that doesn't need to be treated. Undeveloped water could be stuff like rivers or streams, ponds. Then a hotel or motel is the bed sign, and on here the camera is a view sign. So some place it's really good for photos to get a really good view. So we move down here. This is a map of the Appalachian Trail in Massachusetts and Connecticut. So looking down here, it's a little bit hard to see, but there's symbols for the mail, which would be a post office. The fork and knife would be food. a little barn for groceries, the telephone, and the hotel. So in this area, there's those things you can do. There's a bunch of other symbols around the map. If we move over this way, you can see that right here, there is the little tent symbol for the campsite and the P for parking. So the legend gives you a general idea of the things on the map. Now, what wasn't on the legend, which sometimes might be, is different colors. So for example, blue would correspond to water. If it was more a forested area, green would correspond to like tree cover or just a grassy, undeveloped area. Move over here, little blocks would be buildings, and all the big bold lines will either be trails or streets or walkways. So another really good thing about topographic maps is if you look here all across the map, there's the lines that they're just squiggly all across the map. So those are corresponding to the elevation of certain areas of the map. So if you look in this area right here, the lines are relatively far apart. That's showing a very steady and not really steep incline for a mountain or hill. It's sort of hard to see, but right here it has 450, so that'll be 450 feet above sea level, and 540 is right in front of my finger. So because the lines are really spaced far apart, it's a pretty relatively small slope from the 450 to the 540 feet. Now, looking at something like over here, you see that these lines are really close together. That means it's really steep, so it might be a cliff or a really tall hill, something that climbs really quickly. So when you're hiking, if you come across something like that, you know it's a really tough incline, so you should probably proceed with caution. Some other really important things on the map. So you see the big line across, the really black reddish line that will indicate the trail. So in this case, it would be the Appalachian Trail. Like I said before, the smaller lines would be the little streets. There's some dotted lines for smaller trails, smaller roads. Again, there's the blue areas, which would be rivers or ponds. And that's generally what you would find on a topographic map. Topographic maps are really important for trails. You don't really need a generic, maybe you have like an app on your phone that's for maps. Those won't really help you in the best. If you're hiking, you might not have signal or something like that. So it's really important to have a map with you if you're going hiking or anywhere on a trail, just as a backup, just in case you get lost, for example. These are really important to have. So the next thing to go over, we'll move into my backyard in just a moment, is how to operate a compass. So maps are just one side of how to operate and find your direction where you're going, but compasses are the second most important thing. So before you can actually start using the compass, you're going to want to know how big your pace or your stride is. So right here on my measuring tape, I've measured out approximately 20 feet. And then you'll use that to measure how far each of your steps is. So when you're measuring it, you don't want to try and take really big steps or really small steps. Just walk normally so you can see like about how long it takes to move a certain amount of distance. So I'm going to start right at the 20-foot line, go all the way to the end. So it took me about 9 steps to walk 20 feet. So from there you'll be able to calculate. It's about a little more than 2 feet for every step. So then you're more easily able to tell if you're trying to go a certain amount of distance, how many steps it takes to get there. So if I was trying to go, say, to go to 20 feet, for example, in a certain, say, north, trying to go 20 feet north, I would know it would take about 9 steps for me to get there. I was going 40 feet, 18 steps, 60 feet, 27 steps, so on and so on. So as we get to here, after you've taken your pace, you want to start learning how to use the compass. So looking at the compass, you always want to make sure you're lined up right at north. So first get your north arrow pointing with the red little line right here. Sorry, went out of camera a little bit. Want to make sure, again, that north is lined up with the red arrow. So the next step is trying to find which direction north is. So keep turning, we'll find out that direction is north. So whenever, sometimes compasses are a little bit finicky, so you gotta make sure have it really relatively flat. That's why the bubble is in there, so you know if it's level or not. So for the most part, that's level. So now I know that direction, the red arrow is north. So if I was going north, it's perfectly fine. I know I can just walk straight that way, and I'll eventually end up north. Whenever you're walking though, you want to make sure every so often you check which way is north, or which way ever you're going is correct direction, because you might accidentally step off in the wrong direction and start turning. And say I was walking about 500 feet in a certain direction, if I started veering slightly off in the wrong way, it's going to really mess up in the long run where I'm going. So now that I have the red arrow pointing north, I can now figure out if I want to go another direction. So I want to go east, for example. Make sure you line up east with the arrow. Then turn it so the north arrow, this will always point north in the compass, little red arrow right there. Make sure it's lined up with north, and then you know that the direction of this arrow right here is east. So this is more of your guiding line arrow right here. It will always help you go a certain direction you're going, whereas this arrow right here will always point north. So now I know that direction is east, I'm able to easily walk that way. Now I'll show you guys how to properly walk with a compass and how you should be able to easily tell your direction. So you figured out your paces, you figured out how to properly use a compass and know where you're going with it. Now you don't want to know how to properly just walk around and find your direction where you're going. So whenever you're walking, you always want to make sure you have the compass relatively flat with your chest. If you're pointing it downwards, I'm pretty sure north isn't down. You always, like I said before, make sure the compass is level. So usually if you have it right against your chest or right flat in front of you, it's a good way to tell. So you're able to easily go in the direction you want to go, back and forth. It's really important for orienteering, which is the term for traveling with map and compass. That's where it's really important to know how to use a compass, and your paces comes into play. You could have a course at a couple scout camps in Connecticut Yankee Council where orienteering is. There's some courses where it says you have to walk 300 feet in east direction or 170 degrees. The compass has certain degrees on here in a 360 degree pattern. It also has the cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west. So if it was 180 degrees, that would be south, so you'd make sure to turn it all the way to south for the arrow. So you want to make sure that it's properly in the right direction, like I said before. So you go 300 feet in that direction, make sure to have the compass right against you, and that's where your paces would come into play too. If you know how far your step is, like mine, 9 steps is 20 feet. Yours will probably be different than mine. It's just how far you normally walk. You're more able to tell that 300 feet distance in 180 degrees or southwest, something like that. It's also really important to, like I said before, make sure you check direction every so often. If say that direction right in front of me is south, and I'm going south for 180 steps, but I turn slightly to the right, I'm now no longer going south, and if I keep going, it's gonna really mess up where the end point where I'm supposed to be. I might be 100 feet right of where the end point actually is. So it could really screw up the direction you're trying to go in. So a couple compasses, you might have normal compasses like this. This is a generic one you might find at a store. You also have some fancier compasses that don't have the red arrow on them. This one has a little magnifying glass so it's easier to find the direction you're going in on here. It also spins, and if you fold it up and lock it in place, and then you're able to see which direction you're going in better, the line like that. This one's similar to the one we used before, except you would unlock it. Has a little signal mirror on it. Also, you reflect it, see where you're going easier. By pointing it down like that, it reflects off here the compass. And like similar to before, the other one has the directional arrow to point, see which way you're going. You also might have a compass on your phone. They work relatively well. Again, if you're in a forest somewhere, you might not have good enough signal. It's just always really important to have a compass, an actual compass as a backup. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's Maps and Compasses lesson. It's really important to know where you're going with the map and compass. It's always bad if you end up lost. So make sure you always have a map and compass on you wherever you're going, in the woods, on a camping trip, and stuff like that. So campers, thanks for watching. Make sure to stay safe, stay healthy, know where you're going, and wash your hands. This is Scouty Steve. Talk to you guys later.